Lovely job.
Wow, aren't we lucky to have heard that original recording of a man drilling into his thatched roof, weatherproofing it for the winter ahead. Simply fascinating. Hello, and welcome back to the final couplet with me, Theo Cowan. You will not believe the day I'm having. I sat down this morning with a nice cup of coffee and I recorded Sonnet 85. It went well. It wasn't my favourite sonnet of all time, but I got through it. I thought I gave some alright analysis, and then I put it to my little story. And you're going to like this. 7 hours later, I returned to give it a little edit and publish it. And the whole thing's gone. So here we are again. I'm obviously you don't know this. You didn't listen to the original recording, but it's lost forever. So here I am again, 7 hours later, re-recording everything that I recorded this morning. So if I sound pissed off, angry at any point, or like I've lost my mind, then that might be why, because it'll sound and feel to me like I've already gone through this today. Because I have. Anyway, let's take a listen to Sonnet 85, shall we? My tongue-tied muse in manners holds her still, while comments of your praise richly compiled reserve their character with golden quill and precious phrase by all the Muses filed. I think good thoughts, whilst other write good words, and like unlettered clerk still cry Amen to every hymn that able spirit affords, in polished form of well-refined pen. Hearing you praised, I say, 'tis so, 'tis true, and to the most of praise add something more. But that is in my thought, whose love to you, though words come hindmost, holds his rank before. Then others for the breath of words respect, me for my dumb thoughts, speaking in effect. So, as you can hear from that, we are still in that Shakespeare phase of talking about other writers, comparing himself to other poets. Will he ever get out of this phase? None of us know. But we still have a good 85 sonnets ahead of us. So I bloody well hope so, is all I can say. But in this one, he's sort of saying, look, I'm taking a little step back and I'm just thinking amazing thoughts about you. I'm not even putting them on paper. I don't need to. These other poets, go ahead. It's great. Good for them. But that's not how I roll. I'm Shakespeare and I'm different to everyone else. That's what I take away from Sonnet 85. But I think we should dive into it line by line and work out what the hell Shakespeare was going on about in this one. So we start with, my tongue-tied muse in manners holds her still, while comments of your praise, richly compiled, reserve their character with golden quill and precious phrase by all the Muses filed. And you might have noticed that that is not one line. That is the first 4 lines, but it's all one thought, so I think it's useful to break that down as a chunk. And in this chunk of text, he's basically saying, look, I'm remaining tongue-tied and politely silent, whilst other poems flood in, praising you and capturing your essence with lovely golden words, inspired by all the Muses. So he's basically saying, look, I sit here in silence while other poets are writing in, saying how amazing you are. Fair enough, can't say it simpler than that. Then we continue with, I think good thoughts, whilst other write good words. Oh, God, I just think a word has to be said for that line. I think, not Shakespeare's finest bit of work. I think good thoughts, whilst other write good words. it sort of reminds me of something that I wrote in primary school, where you say good instead of, other words that you could use. Good was used a lot in primary school, and he used it twice in this sentence. He also says, whilst other write good words. That doesn't sound right. I'd say others, personally, but I guess, 500 or so years ago, that's maybe how they wrote, and fair play to them. But it seems and strikes me as slightly lazy, that line. Sorry. Look, someone has to say it. Anyway, back to the text. Stop slagging off Shakespeare, Theo. And like unlettered clerk, still cry amen to every hymn that able spirit affords, in polished form of well-refined pen. So he's saying, I think good thoughts about you, obviously, while other people write good words about you. Pretty simple. And like an illiterate clerk, because I'm illiterate, I can't write. So imagine I am an illiterate clerk and I cry amen to every poem of praise that comes in by other poets. And, as I said before, they're polished and well refined. And I basically just sit there going, amen to that. Yeah, that's right. That is a good poem. And I respect everything within it. All the love stuff, all the beauty about you. Yep, good for you. But, crucially, I'm not writing my own poem about it. So he is comparing himself to a sort of priest, a parish clerk, if you will, saying amen at the end of sermon. So he's basically agreeing with all these poets. He's saying that's fine for them to write in and write lovely poetry about you. Not a problem. If anything, I encourage it. And he continues, hearing you praised, I say, 'tis so, 'tis true. And to the most of praise add something more. But that is in my thought, whose love to you, though words come hindmost, holds his rank before. Again, sorry to take so many lines and pop them together there, but it is one thought, and I think it is the most useful to break it down like this. And here he's saying, so hearing you praised by these writers, I sit there and I say, 'tis so, 'tis true, which is interesting, Shakespeare, because at the start of the poem you said you were tongue-tied, so which one is it? Make up your mind. No, but seriously, he sat there and he's saying, 'tis so, 'tis true, yeah, all these things that you're writing about my love, that's all true. I respect it. And I add some praise of my own. I pop some more praise on, but the praise that I'm adding is in my head. It's in my thoughts. And in this little section here, he's saying, I love you the most, even though I say the least, because it's all up here in my noggin, in my head. God, it must be an absolute nightmare dating Shakespeare. Because if he's just sitting there thinking you're really lovely and thinking all these beautiful things about you, but not saying anything, how the hell can you read his mind? You can't. It's all well and true saying that you're thinking nice things, but how's his lover supposed to know this? Oh, it's a tricky life. Anyway, now we're on to the final couplet. Then others for the breath of words respect, me for my dumb thoughts speaking in effect. Oh, I love a little rhyming couplet at the end. Respect and effect, yes please. And here he's basically saying, look, respect others for the amazing words that they offer you in their poetry, but also, crucially, respect me for my silent thoughts, which really speak for themselves. Alternatively, the last little section, speaking in effect, could mean in the actions that I do rather than my words. That is a potential take on it, I think. So maybe he's kissing his lover on the forehead or holding his hand or something. He's saying, look, actions speak louder than words. That could be the meaning. Jury's out on that. Or he's just saying, look, I love you the most because I'm thinking these amazing things about you and I'm not writing them down like everyone else. But as we said before, unfortunately, Shakespeare, you are writing them down, and you're writing them down in the form of Sonnet 85 and the 6 or so sonnets you wrote before about not writing poetry. So, that is Sonnet 85. I got through it again. And this time, I think my analysis was even better than it was the first recording I did this morning. So lucky you. Right, I think it's about time to put this to our story. And if you remember last week, Shakespeare is giving this masterclass to a load of young, aspiring poets. And he's taken Christopher Marlowe along with him to be the subject of these students' poetry, a sort of example of a sexy muse that they can all write about. And all the students have written their poems and given them to Shakespeare. He's read a few of them out loud, and he's saying, yeah, these are all great. But here's mine. I've written one as well. And so he reads Sonnet 84, which is about all these other poets writing about his muse. But if you remember, at the end of Sonnet 84, he also says, look, you're blessed with all this beauty, but you love to hear yourself praised loads, and you don't need to do that. You don't need people to write about you to feel good. And actually, in encouraging that, you're making people worse at writing, which I think is not a great thing to say to your lover. But anyway, let's see how Christopher Marlowe takes that and how Sonnet 85 fits into all this. Shakespeare finishes reading Sonnet 85. There is a pause in the auditorium, and then a student stands up and starts clapping and whooping, and then they all stand up and start clapping and whooping and going, Shakespeare, Shakespeare, Shakespeare. Shakespeare walks to the front of the stage and bows, holds up his hands and says, thank you, thank you. Christopher Marlowe joins him and whispers in his ear, Shakespeare, I think what you said at the end of Sonnet 84 was totally out of order. I'm not desperate for praise. I'm not demanding more poetry about me. And Shakespeare said, well, you do sort of act like you're desperate for poetry sometimes. And Christopher Marlowe says, well, it's nice to receive poetry. Sorry, is that a crime? But I'm not hungry for it. I'm not gagging for it. And Shakespeare says, sorry, I'm trying to soak up this applause. Can we talk about this later? Christopher Marlowe storms out of the auditorium. Shakespeare spends the next hour soaking up the applause and blowing kisses to the young students. He loves the attention. That night he returns home to an angry, despondent Christopher Marlowe. And as they brush their teeth, Marlowe says, I think what you did earlier was totally out of order. And Shakespeare says, look, I'm just trying to teach them a lesson. It's not that deep, dude. Marlowe says, fine, Shakespeare, but don't let it happen again. And just for the record, I'm not desperate for poetry. And Shakespeare says, I know. And they kiss and go to sleep. First thing in the morning, there's a knock at the door. Shakespeare goes down and says, hello, who is it? It's the postman. Oh, great. Yeah, just put it through the postbox, I guess. Well, I wish I could, Mr. Shakespeare, but there's rather too many bits of mail. And Shakespeare says, are you Australian? Oh, wow, you really know your accents, don't you? What the hell are you doing as a postman? Well, I just got off the boat from Aussie land, and I needed a job, so I thought, well, become a postman. Why not? Fair enough. And Shakespeare finally opens the door to him. Oh, look, you got 3 massive bags here of post. So, yeah. But they're all addressed to this address, but to a gentleman called Christopher Marlowe or something like that. Shakespeare says, yeah, Christopher Marlowe, my lover. Oh, great, your lover. Awesome. Well, is he here? And Shakespeare says, yeah, he is. Let me just get him down. Christopher Marlowe comes down and sees all this post for him. He says, what the hell's all this? I don't know, mate, but they're all for you. Marlowe says, well, thank you, Mr. Postman. And he opens one of the letters and sees it is a sonnet by a young man that obviously attended Shakespeare's masterclass. He opened a few more sonnets. He had received hundreds and hundreds of sonnets from all these young men writing to him after Shakespeare's class. And Shakespeare says, well, bloody hell, I guess they found out my address and just started writing to you. Well, we can use these as a fire kindling, can't we? And Christopher Marlowe says, well, hold up. I'd quite like to read some of them if you don't mind. And Shakespeare says, sorry, I thought you said sort of last night that you weren't actually desperate for the attention of all these poets, and you didn't need poetry in your life particularly. Christopher Marlowe says, well, it'd be rude to not read these, at least, even maybe to give them constructive criticism. That would be rude, Shakespeare, so I'm just going to read one or two of them, maybe. And Shakespeare says, oh, fine. Sorry to bother you guys, but can I leave? I've got a lot of houses to get to. Oh, sorry, yes, you can go, Mr. Postman. Goodbye. See ya. So Christopher Marlowe spends the rest of the day reading all of the sonnets he's received. He gets through pretty much every one of them. Shakespeare's standing there seething. He can't believe he's reading all of these sonnets. It's ridiculous. But he thinks to himself, oh, I can't help but think this guy is absolutely lovely. And I don't need to write any poetry to express that. I just need to think it. So he stands for the next 2 hours thinking how lovely Christopher Marlowe is. And then Shakespeare coughs and says, Marlowe, did you sort of receive anything from me there? And Marlowe says, sorry, no, what are you talking about? I'm just reading these sonnets. And Shakespeare says, well, I'm thinking lovely things about you. And Marlowe says, oh, that's nice, thank you. And Shakespeare says, well, are you not pleased that I'm thinking nice things? Are you not receiving my thoughts? And Marlowe says, well, I didn't really notice. I'm just sort of deep into reading these, so not particularly, but thanks, mate. That's really lovely. And Shakespeare storms out of the room. He thinks the only way to get this across to Marlowe is to write a bloody sonnet, of course, to say that he's thinking about him and that he doesn't need to write poetry in order to express how much he loves him. And that can only be said in a sonnet, of course. That makes total sense. And so he spends the next hour writing Sonnet 85 and eventually runs down the stairs to Christopher Marlowe, who is still there reading these students' sonnets. Shakespeare says, Marlowe, I have written a sonnet of my own. And Marlowe says, yeah, okay, just put it on the pile. I'll get to it eventually. And Shakespeare says, no, there's no putting it on the pile. I'm Shakespeare. That's crazy. You got to hear this now. And Marlowe says, oh, God. Fine, read it out to me. So, with that, Shakespeare clears his throat and reads Sonnet 85. I remain tongue-tied and politely silent, whilst poems flood in praising you and capturing your essence with golden words inspired by all the Muses. I think good thoughts about you, whilst others write good words, and like an illiterate clerk, I cry Amen to every poem of praise that an able poet writes for you in their polished, well-refined style. When I hear you praised, I say, yep, that's right, it's true, and add something else to their praise. But what I add is only in my head. I love you the most, even though I speak the least. Respect others for the amazing words they offer you, but respect me for my silent thoughts which speak for themselves. So there we have it, Sonnet 85 done and dusted, never to be revisited. I mean, someone might revisit it at some point, but consider this the definitive Sonnet 85 analysis. Anyway, until next week.